Good day, everyone, and welcome to the Animal Welfare Group Nigeria. I am Dr. Iyasiri Oluwaseun. I'm an associate professor at the Federal University of Agriculture, Abeokuta, Nigeria, and currently a George Foster Experience Researcher at the Humboldt Universität zu Berlin in Germany. And I'll be the host for today's meeting. Thank you once again for joining us. Today's topic is going to be on ethnoveterinary medicine practices for animal welfare in Nigeria. But before we proceed, I'll just give a brief introduction to what the Animal Welfare Group Nigeria is about. The Animal Welfare Group Nigeria was established in the year 2019 after the gathering of students and researchers at the Federal University of Agriculture, Abeokuta, Nigeria. And we have three main missions, which are to increase awareness in animal behavior and welfare. Secondly, to foster collaboration among stakeholders who are interested in animal behavior and welfare. And thirdly, to educate stakeholders on the importance of animal behavior. And that is why we are here today, with this webinar presentation, so we can all learn about ethnoveterinary practices. Our presenter today is Professor Bukola Oyebanji from the Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile Ife, Nigeria. And our moderator is Rukayat Akiyemi. She is a master's student at the Federal University of Agriculture, Abeokuta, Nigeria. I hope you find today's presentation interesting. We want it to be as engaging as possible, so kindly drop your questions in the chat box, and the questions will be taken immediately after the presentation. Thank you so much. You're welcome, Ma, and I'll hand over to the moderator.
Webinar series. We are thrilled to present the topic, Ethnoveterinary Medicine Practices for Animal Welfare in Nigeria, to be presented by Professor Bukola Oyebanji. But before we begin, I would like to introduce Professor Oyebanji to you. Professor Bukola Oyebanji is a distinguished veterinarian, researcher, and educator with extensive experience in veterinary medicine, pharmacology, and animal physiology. She obtained a Doctor of Veterinary Medicine from the University of Ibadan in 2000, followed by an MSc in Veterinary Pharmacology in 2004, and an MTech in Animal Physiology from Ladoke Akintola University of Technology in 2006. Professor Oyebanji later completed a PhD in Veterinary Pharmacology at the University of Ibadan in 2011. She has actively pursued professional development, earning certificates in areas like animal biosafety, climate change, sustainable energy. Recognized for exceptional contributions, Professor Oyebanji has received numerous scholarships, fellowships, and awards, including the TWAS BVT NXT Fellowship, Masha Postgraduate Fellowship, Wellcome Trust Bursary Award, among others, and has secured research grants from reputable institutions. As an educator, she has played a pivotal role in shaping the next generation of veterinary professionals. Professor Oyebanji is an active member of several professional organizations, including the Nigerian Veterinary Medical Association, Nigerian Society of Animal Production, and Third World Organization of Women in Science, and among others. She enjoys diverse hobbies, including reading, writing, and cycling. So let's settle in and enjoy the program. Please don't hesitate to submit any questions you may have through the chat box. Prof. Ma, it's over to you. You have the floor, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you so very much. I want to say a big thank you to Rukayat and to my own sister, Oluwaseun Iyasiri. Good afternoon, everybody. As I've been introduced, I'm Bukola Oyebanji from Obafemi Awolowo University, and like we normally call it, Oba University. And my topic for today is ethnoveterinary medicine practices for animal welfare in Nigeria. What is ethnoveterinary medicine? Ethnoveterinary medicine is a field for protecting animal health by treating illnesses that is associated with traditional beliefs, indigenous knowledge, and practices. So I want us to underline those words: traditional belief and indigenous knowledge. Yes, the next word is animal welfare. We are all from AWGN, Animal Welfare Group. I normally like defining my terms so that we are all on the same page. According to history, there is this woman, Ruth Harrison, in 1996. She wrote a book titled Animal Machine in Britain. And after writing the book, there was an uproar among the people because people didn't know what was going on in intensive livestock production, intensive chicken production. And the uproar led to the setting up of a committee that eventually submitted the Bramble report. And in summary, what the committee said was that freedom for animals is for them to be able to lie down, to sit up, to turn around, groom themselves, and to be able to stretch their limbs. And from there, we got what is known as the 5 freedoms of animal welfare. I am sure all of us will know this, but I want to reiterate it again because as a teacher, I believe that something that is very important has to be repeated over and over again. And so the 5 freedoms of animal welfare, number 1 is freedom from hunger and thirst. And that is the nutritional part of welfare because welfare goes beyond just one single thing. And I'm sure every one of us will be able to see our field in those 5 freedoms. So we have the nutritionist, animal scientist, freedom from hunger and thirst. That's their own major area in welfare. So that's why they are part of animal welfare. Freedom from discomfort. We are talking about environment and housing, management. So people in animal production. The third is freedom from pain, injury, or disease. And that's by prevention and treatment. And that's why we have the veterinarians, more or less. And the fourth is freedom to express normal behavior. And that is where the ethologists come in. Because when we talk about behavior, we are talking about ethology. So that's another leg of animal welfare. And the last but not the least is freedom from fear and distress. And in that situation, we still have the ethologists, we have the people in health, everybody coming together to make sure that our animals are not distressed. So those are the 5 freedoms of animal welfare. So I'm bringing this up so that you can know the area where I'm coming in from. So that is animal health and animal welfare. I am specialized as an animal health specialist. And so good animal welfare requires disease prevention and veterinary treatment, appropriate shelter, management, nutrition, humane handling, humane slaughter, and humane killing. And from history, we've been made to realize that animal welfare began in ancient civilizations. I'm from Yoruba land, and in Yoruba land, there are some of these animals, they will give them oriki. There are some of these animals, there are some, families that when they are praising them, they will be using the oriki of animals. So we discover that every civilization actually, and many culture and religion, they have some aspect of animal welfare. Another thing I want us to look at is, okay, so this is animal health and is a key. I said it earlier on, pain, we want to do disease management, trauma, alleviate pain, injury, and of course, improve weight gain. Another factor I will want us to look at is animal ethics versus animal welfare. Animal ethics is becoming very important, especially for people in research. If you want to work with any animal now, and you want to publish in good journals, you must get ethical clearance. I submitted a paper, and yesterday, while submitting, they were asking, do you need ethical clearance? I said no. So yesterday, they sent a report. They sent their report, and they were asking me, why did you not need ethical clearance? You have to justify, you have to do this, you have to do that. I had to sit down and look at why I did not need ethical clearance. And, in February, I was privileged to be chosen as the first chairperson for institutional animal care and use ethical committee for my institution. So for a long time now, I've been sitting down and reading and, I've had to do some courses on animal ethics. And what's the relationship between animal ethics and animal welfare? The science of animal welfare is what provides knowledge and understanding that forms the basis from which we make ethical choices regarding animals. Those 5 freedoms that we talk about, whenever we are doing ethical clearance, those are some of the things we look out for. How are you going to take care of this animal? Are you going to make sure they are not in pain? And those 5 freedoms, they work in tandem with the 3R of animal ethics. Researchers, we all know these 3R. Replacement, that is, must you use animals for this work? If you can use something else like cell line, cell culture, and all that, then use them. But if you can't avoid it, can you refine your research? That refinement means you want to make sure that the animals are kept away from pain, they are kept away from discomfort. You do everything as humanly possible that these animals are kept in good physical and mental conditions. And the 3rd R for animal ethics is actually reduction. That is, if you can use 10 animals, why use 20? So we discovered that animal welfare is actually the broad-based system which every one of us will come under. You know, animal health practitioner, nutritionist, management, ethics. The welfare is our basis, is what we stand on. So we want to talk about the ethnoveterinary practice. Now, when we talk about ethnoveterinary practice, you can see practices, not just one single thing. When we check literature, there are for different culture, different ethnoveterinary practices, or different ethno. You know, we've said ethno is traditional practices in health and disease prevention. The one that is very popular is herbal remedies, and is a cornerstone element of ethnoveterinary practice. And what is done here is that medicinal plants or plants and remedies are derived from plants, from local plants. And traditional healers, they have extensive knowledge of medicinal plants and the therapeutic properties. And there are different ways of producing this. I'm sure we all know that. When you get into the vehicle, sometimes you see people, they will tell you, and you know, we used to make jest. They will tell you, look at this decoction I have. It can cure headache, it can cure tummy ache, it can cure. There are different things. And you know, there was a time I was discussing with a friend, a scientist too, and he said he bought one of the concoctions. And by the time he took it, he said he worked. So I said, please just be careful. So we have all this decoction, infusion, poultices. They are administered to animals. The second ethnoveterinary practice is divination and spiritual healing. And you know, there are instances where there is mix-up. Because most times growing up, we discover that herbalists, they will use herb and then they will still do divination and spiritual healing. And that made a lot of people to run away from it. But those are 2 different practices. You know, growing up, I was discussing with Professor Yasiri earlier, and I said, it was a particular film that really made me to understand things about herbs when I was in primary school. But another thing that used to concern me is, you know, sometimes when those people are talking, they will say a weird and I'll be like, do you need to put something to make the herbs to work? But that is another aspect of ethnoveterinary practice. And what I know is you can do one without the other. And we have herbalists that are doing both. So there is the divination and spiritual healing. And then we have massage and manipulative therapies. For the Yorubas, they incorporate this. And there are some people, they will tell you when they have problem with bones, they will take chicken and break the bone. And then they will treat the chicken and they feel that when the chicken is healed, the human being's bone will be healed as well. So we have that. They will put massage, manipulation therapy, and there are dietary interventions too for ethnoveterinary practice. There are some things that you cannot eat. Humans, even some animals, they will not allow them to take some. And we have different other practices. But because I'm going to focus more on herbal practices, I'll limit other practices I could have talked about. And so what are the benefits of ethnoveterinary medicine? I'm only going to mention like 3 here as general benefits. Then we'll look at why it is critical. I decided to break it into 2. Normally in my class, when I teach students ethnoveterinary medicine practices, I will give them about 8 advantages and tell them to go and look for 3 or thereabout more. So, number 1 benefit is locally available because we are talking about herbs in your environment and easily accessible. Number 2, template for drug development. Practically all the synthetic drugs we have, they were extracted from plant material, and then they looked at their structure and they were synthetically produced. And number 3, culturally appropriate and understood. Those are some of the benefits. And I'll still continue making reference to these things because later on we'll talk a little bit about the change in dynamics. So these are some of the benefits of ethnoveterinary medicine. And now for this season that we are in, why is ethnoveterinary medicine critical? We are all in Nigeria. I think practically all of us are in Nigeria. Drugs are becoming very costly. I went to buy Aerofloxacin 20%. In 2023 January, it was 8,000 naira. April 2024, I called my friend that sells drug. In March, he said 20,000. The drug is about 22,000. Exactly 1 liter. That was 8,000 in January last year. Now 22,000 naira. So because of all the issues, economical problems we are having, they have told us now that we should eat Nigeria, we should sleep Nigeria, we should buy Nigeria. So ethnoveterinary medicine is actually our way of drugging Nigeria, as in using drugs in Nigeria. The second thing is there is difficulty in getting some drugs. There are some drugs, it's not, of course, I could get Aerofloxacin, but there are some drugs now that, because of the economic problem, for you to get them, veterinary drugs is a big problem. You may get them, but before you can get them, you are going to have a lot of problems. And these are some of the drugs that we need. And because of this, there is a lot of adulterated drugs in the market, veterinary drugs. A lot of them are adulterated because they are imported. A lot of things are happening before it gets to the final consumer. And so we are saying, okay, let's work Nigeria because ethno, it means local. How can we produce locally? And because of the problem we are having with drugs, there is a lot of underdosing going on. Drug is not controlled in Nigeria. So you see some farmers, they will buy. I saw some, and I was asking, I said, what quantity are you going to use? And the person told me, I will use a spoon. And I said, no. For this tank you have, you are meant to use 10 sachets. And now this farmer is planning to use a spoon. Can you compare? Instead of 10 sachets of 100 grams each, instead of 1,000 grams, this farmer was planning on using 15 grams. And when we talk about underdosing, antimicrobial resistance is a huge problem in the world, not only in Nigeria. And one of the major problems of the causative factor of AMR is underdosing. Another problem is expiry drug. There was a time that there were some issues and people that were importing things, their product got stuck in at the ship berth. By the time they got this product, some of them were about expiring. But of course, business people, They cleaned the date and they were still selling.
Hmm.
And so there is the need for us to get our own drug here so that we can control what goes on. Another thing why it is critical for us now is there is gradual extinction of useful ethno practices. People are not really understanding what is going on again. If you have somebody, maybe younger generation, they may not know as much as the older generation. So, and we don't want this part of our culture to go out to become extinct because they are useful for us. And another problem is important vaccine, that's prevention. There was a particular vaccine that I've been looking for since last year. I wanted to vaccinate some cattle. Till I'm talking, I'm yet to get them because people are not using them so much, so they are not being imported. You know, a businessman will import what a lot of people can use, not just what some of you will use. And so because of that, there is a need for us to look inward. And I said problem of importation, bottlenecks, break-in cold chain, electricity problem, especially when you are living in a place that is not band A. Energy crisis in Nigeria. And all these problems have made it to be very critical that we have to develop our ethnoveterinary medicine so that we don't compromise animal health. And of course, when you compromise animal health, you are compromising your animal welfare. So some of ethnoveterinary practices in welfare, I'm sure some of us seeing this will laugh. When I was young, this is a common sight around my area. It is camouflage. When local people don't want ox to pick their chicks, they will dip them in dye. And the hawk will not be able to see them. This is a very, very beautiful way of protecting our own birds. We can still use them. Instead of caging them in all day, fearing predators, this is a very beautiful way of beating predators at their game. These plants, Lagenaria breviflora, tagiri, we call it tagiri in Yoruba. And it's so important because in houses, in the olden days, and even now, you see that people will put it around the house. Not, of course, people eat it, but one of the most important work is it is used as air purifier. It is believed that it keeps away measles, keep away viral infections. So this is like preventative medicine used by the local people. And even now people put it inside the house of poultry to prevent the viral infection from coming in. This is an ethnoveterinary practice that is becoming popular now. Free range. You know, in our area, we find chickens going all over the place. They are free ranging. And that is what has been advocated for now, that chickens should be allowed to free range so that they can exhibit their natural tendencies and not to be cooped up in a place, kept for a period of time and eaten. And of course, I hope we know this. Brooding. Brooding is a natural behavior for chickens. And it's part of the practices that we have in Yoruba land. And I'm sure we practically all local area. The chickens will lay the eggs, brood it, take care. And I'm happy that Mama Hen is here. These are some of the natural behaviors of our animals. So having said all that, what are the limitations? Now I'm going to start limiting down very seriously now to herbs. You know, while ethnoveterinary practices have endured for generations, they are facing challenges in the modern context. And some of the challenges include limited documentation, loss of traditional knowledge due to urbanization and globalization, over-reliance on Western veterinary medicine, and a lot of others. So we are going to look at some of the limitations. I'm not going to speak about a particular herb because we have a lot of them. What I'm really going to continue talking about is what are the limitations and what can we do to overcome this challenge, because we want ethnoveterinary medicine to become mainstream. We don't want it to be extra. We want it to be mainstream. We want our farmers to take care of the animals using this ethnoveterinary medicine. So, my first case study. I'm a teacher, so this normal thing we do in class, and I hope you are going to enjoy it. This was the instruction I gave. For me, I take neem tea with moringa virtually every morning. It's in my house. I have some plants around me, and I try to get new ones. So practically every morning I'll take neem. And so I gave this instruction, and I said, take a handful of neem leaves. And I told my girl, put it in a pot and boil for 1 hour. And I said, drink a cup afterwards, or give a cup to your birds afterwards. Now for this case study, what are the issues with it? I want to use this case study for us to see why people have different results when they try to go the way of ethnoveterinary, when they try to use herbal. Now let me focus on herbal remedy. Now I've given these 3 instructions. These instructions that I've given is so varied that scientifically is wrong. I said, so see my animals. I told them, can you carry out this instruction? And they have lots and lots of questions because I've not really given enough information. So you can see my dog. What are the key considerations? Number 1, what is the dry matter content of the neem leaf that I asked my daughter to take? Or I'm asking a farmer, because you tell farmer, oh yeah, you can use neem leaf. Ah, okay, we use neem leaf. And that is the problem of standardization. Herbal remedies are yet to be properly standardized. What is the dry matter content of the neem? I've not said it, because different dry matter content will give me different results. Handful of neem leaf. Am I talking about very fresh neem, wilted neem, or dried neem? Another thing is, I said handful. My handful, I'm sure, will be different from Professor Iyasere's handful and Dr. Duro Sharo's handful. And it will be different because your body size will determine what your handful is. And so we have issues of standardization. Another issue with that instruction is the season of harvest. Different seasons will have leaves or roots. They have different components at different seasons. So if I just say it in a blanket manner, and like we normally have for ethnoveterinary practice, herbal remedy, then another important thing is, what's the stage of maturity of that leaf? Because the stage of maturity will determine the active component of the leaf. I've told the farmer, or I've told my daughter, put it in a pot and boil. What size of pot am I talking about? What quantity of water do I want this person to use? And I've said boil for 1 hour. When I'm saying boil for 1 hour, is it on Inaru? Is it coal pot? Is it electric kettle? Is it what? Because the intensity of flame will determine the rate of extraction. And I've said, okay, take a cup. That 1 cup, what's the size? Is it teacup of 40 mils? Is it teacup of 1 liter? How do they use it? So, number 1 issue that we have is actually in standardization of herbal remedies. I've reviewed some papers, and some people will just give very small information. And I will ask them, no, this information, I cannot reproduce your work. You must give me more information, because when we talk standardization, it means that if I say this is neem extract preparation, it must have exactly the same component every time, so that I can know I'm getting exactly the same result every time. Another issue is weight of animal. If I say that, okay, you can give it to adult goat, I've not said anything. The size of an adult goat, of especially wad, is just a little bit more than the size of a calf. So that's why we normally use weight in veterinary medicine. And all these things must be taken into consideration. And of course, the species of animal. What type of animal am I talking about? Can I use it in chicken and now still use it in goat? Can I use it in adult goat and still use it in baby goat? Because physiology of adult goats and baby goat, they differ. And so these are some of the challenges that as scientists, we must find and provide answers to, so that ethnoveterinary medicine can become mainstream. So that's number one. Number two, I titled this, Where is my plant? I hope you are seeing those pictures. On this side, and I think I have to hasten up a bit. On this side, we can find pasture land. In the middle, we can find a land that is cleared. I had this issue when I was doing PhD. I used to harvest my plants in a particular place. So I harvested and I prepared my extract. And about 2 months after I needed to harvest again, I got there and I found a building coming up. They are already building in the area. And sincerely, I looked around the whole place. I could not get that plant again. You know, we said one of the advantages is that accessibility, availability. But our towns are growing up horizontally now, not vertically in Nigeria. And because we depend so much on the wild, so many of these plants are going into extinction. So for Nigeria context, we are having this big issue. And you know, that's why I say, where is my plant? Because one day it was there, the next day it wasn't there. And I could not fight with the owner of the land because I went to harvest in the wild. So there is no active conservation method. Another part of the challenge is the route of administration. Medicinal plants, because of their nature, they are normally given orally, they can be used topically, they can be inhaled, and of course, they can be put in the environment like tagiri as air cleanser. And so this makes it difficult to use them in emergency situations. Because most times when you want to do emergency, you have to just go parenteral. You can't, you know, use enteral method. That is the GI or topical or something. You have to go into maybe the muscle, you have to go into the vein, you have to go there. And we can't still do that. So that's a big limitation. We can use it to prevent, but when it becomes emergency, it's not a choice method. So I'm asking, where are they? You know, we said, okay, they are available, they are accessible. Actually, do we have these plants? Are they really available and accessible as we are making them to be? There was a time I read about a particular plant that is meant to be in the Southwest. So I went to the herbarium and I checked, where can I find this plant? They looked at the location, but the plant was no more there because the town has grown to the area. So when we are looking at advantages of ethnoveterinary medicine and we are saying availability and accessibility, that is fast becoming not the norm. All these plants we are talking about, where actually are they? When we talk about ethnoveterinary medicine, we have to talk about sustainability. Harvesting from the wild is not sustainable. So ethnoveterinary, for us to be able to use it in animal welfare, we must make sure that we look at the issue of sustainability. Then pharmacodynamics and pharmacokinetics. Different animals, they process drug differently. And so because of that, there is a need for us to focus and look at the different animals. What exactly do they need? it can't be one size fits all for all the animals. For humans, you can say male, female, black, white, but for animals, we can't do this. And so these are some of the challenges we have been facing in ethnoveterinary medicine for animal welfare in Nigeria. And, I'm trying to bring out some of these challenges so that together we can work on them and, contribute to those very vital and critical aspects of animal welfare. Then there is no ethnoveterinary pharmacy. You can't get into any pharmacy now and say, okay, I want to buy ewe tagiri, ewe kinikon, that is specific for our animals. I'm talking about local products, not imported ones. There was a time I bought some imported medicinal products. They are so expensive. And I'm sure we all know all these different products they sell for us, and they said they are medicinal. Look, anything that is imported, medicinal plant or not, becomes very expensive, and it becomes difficult for people to be able to afford. And then conservation, seed development, and cultivation. I've been working with plant materials. I've not seen any place where the seed of these medicinal plants are sold that they can be cultivated. I've not. And so please, people in plant science, people in crop production, and this is a very, very vital area that we want you to work with. People in botany, we need this thing to be able to establish ethnoveterinary medicine as a mainstream area for animal welfare in Nigeria. So I said there is change in dynamics. When you read so many literatures, they will say rural area. Well, for people in Southwest Nigeria, I don't know any place you can go and you call rural area again. I've traveled the whole length and breadth of Southwest Nigeria. I can't really call any place village or okoko, you understand, rural, in the sense of rural of those olden days. There is a lot of development going on. There is a lot of urbanization of even the so-called rural areas. So we have more of peri-urban areas. And because of that, animal production has become more peri-urban and urban than rural. And so it's not like, okay, you leave your house and you go to the backyard and you can find different plants that you can pluck. And then migration of youth. So before, they will say all this knowledge is transmitted orally. The youth are no more there to learn from the parents. And so knowledge of plants is being lost in the process. And our cities are growing horizontally. They are encroaching into all those so-called rural areas. And there is a lot of destruction of our herbal fauna. And so the dynamic is changing. And we have to look at how we can come in to make ethnoveterinary medicine still work despite the change in dynamics. This is an argument now in research. There's a whole lot of arguments that when you are working, should you work with the whole extract, that is crude extract, or do you go into isolating the compound and naming the exact component that is responsible for the activity you are looking at? There are some students now that if they are working on ethnoveterinary medicine, they can't just use crude extract and graduate. They must go further into looking for one particular thing that is active. And so I'm asking myself, I said, for us in Nigeria, what should be our direction of research in this ethnoveterinary medicine? Do we follow that path of, okay, if you get your crude extracts, you must be able to tell us precisely one single thing that is active. When you get a crude extract, you find zillions of components inside it. And so pinpointing one takes time and it wastes a lot of things. But I'm putting this out to researchers, especially people in ethnoveterinary medicine. What is the way forward for us in Nigeria? Because we have seen that welfare of our animals is at stake if we don't actually do Nigeria concerning production of drugs. So I have some papers, uses of medicinal plants in animal health. this person did ethnoveterinary study of medicinal plants. You go online, you find lots and lots and lots of survey. And this is one of my papers where we try to use medicinal extract as an adjuvant for vaccine, Newcastle disease vaccine in chickens. So we use that medicinal plant to improve on the production of antibodies, to improve the immune effect of the extract. So we've had a lot of people working on medicinal plants. And earlier on I talked about ethics. One of the things that is a bit concerning for me, and you can see that my dog too is concerned. He said, why am I here? We've been doing a lot of animal research. But the issue is, what is the aim of using animal in this research? A lot of laboratory animals are being used in research. Are we using these animals only to extrapolate for humans, test compounds on them, and then we bring it to humans? Are we doing animal research for animals? Because I read a lot of articles. A lot of our articles are based on, okay, we want to use this animal so that humans can use it. Are we doing research to use these animals for themselves? I'm talking about ethnoveterinary medicine because we have been told, okay, for us to be able to make it mainstream, we have to validate. How many drug research is done for the benefit of animals? I'm not talking about doing it so that you can now go and do clinical trial. Doing it and stopping it with the animals. So when we are talking about animal welfare, we have to really look into this. We have to put in a lot of money to do research for the sake of animal welfare. And so I told my animals, don't worry, we are doing research for your sake, not only so that humans can come around and get it. Knowledge is power. I'll soon be rounding up. In Nigeria, there is a lot of research on medicinal plants. It's actually a low-hanging fruit. Go and check. Different departments, animal science, vets, everybody is using one plant or the other. We have lots of researchers working on plant materials. But we are yet to harness that body of knowledge to animal health and welfare. Everybody seems to be doing whatever they are doing in their own home. We have said that animal health is a component of animal welfare. You cannot get into any hospital, any animal clinic, any animal hospital, and get locally made herbal remedy from Nigeria. And if you will get some, I bought some, they said it's anti-diarrhea. No dose was written on it. Nothing, no standardization at all. How could you bring out a drug and you are not telling me how to use it? How could you bring out a drug without telling me the components? Just tell me it has so, and so. So a lot of people are doing a lot of work in different areas, using rats to extrapolate for humans. Some people are using few other animals. And we are not really assessing this. So really, I don't believe knowledge is power. I believe it is when knowledge is assessed that it becomes power. And so what's the way forward on my study, ethnoveterinary medicine? I've done quite a lot of work. I've worked on some plant material using different animals because I'm in the Department of Animal Sciences. And when I started with using lab rats. But as a pharmacologist, I know that the pharmacokinetics and the pharmacodynamics, they are different. I know that there are some drugs I can use in a kid, that's young goat, that I cannot use in adult goats because of the rumen development. So after that, I started working with animals. Of course, it can be quite expensive because, getting all those animals, they are not as cheap as using rats. And of course, if you want to do anything on reproduction, it takes a longer time. And so we started working with my students. We started looking at, okay, what could be the effects? We are doing a lot on immune system. We are looking at how can we strengthen the immune system of these animals so that they don't even come down. And sometimes we work with a particular species, and by the time you are working at another species, you are getting something entirely different. So I know that pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics are different. And I know that a lot of people too are working. But we are not working together to make this thing mainstream. Most times our research is kept in our offices. I can say it categorically and with all confidence that if we can harness all this knowledge together, ethnoveterinary medical practice, especially about remedies in Nigeria for Nigerian animals, will really go a long way in taking care of our animal welfare. And it's going to reduce cost. We'll be able to see precisely what we are giving to these animals, and of course, it's a business as well. So I believe that the way forward for ethnoveterinary medicine in Nigeria is that there should be a body organization saddled with development of medicinal plant value chain. It is not about when you are giving it finally, it's about the value chain. How do you plant it? How do you get the seed? What type of soil is good for which particular plant? I'm sure we all know that the type of soil determines the active principle of our plant. There was a time I was reading a particular article and they said that it is not all onion that will make you weepy. If you plant onion in a soil without sulfur, it will not cause your eyes to bring out water. So, ethnoveterinary medicine is about a value chain. From getting the seed of all these very important medicinal plants, from preserving, from conservation, from extracting, from packaging, from standardization, till the final user. So there is need for a society of ethnobotanists, veterinarians, animal scientists, chemists, farmers, traditional workers. There is a need for a society to bring everybody together. It's quite imperative. And hopefully by the middle of this year, on our own part, there is an initiative that we are trying to build up to that effect. We want to mainstream ethnoveterinary medicine, especially the herbal remedy. So in conclusion, the great and coordinated effort to preserve and integrate. It is necessary for us to integrate ethnoveterinary knowledge into formal veterinary education and research initiatives, recognizing the value of indigenous wisdom in complementing conventional veterinary practices and promoting holistic approaches to animal health and welfare. This is something we must advocate. We need to synchronize efforts from different researchers. And like I said earlier, it is time for us to establish a community of ethnoveterinary medicine practitioners in Nigeria. So these are some of my references. I want to say thank you very much for listening to me. I appreciate it, and let's discuss. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for this eye-opening presentation on ethnoveterinary practices. I appreciate you. You are absolutely a good teacher. I hope we can learn from her how to be a good teacher, how to explain. Yes, and I also appreciate the fact that you were able to use some specific case studies, to bring out your point, which is very good in our educational system. Thank you so much for that. So I would hand over to the moderator to take, I think we have some questions in the chat box for you, Ma.
Okay.
So,
thank you so much, Ma, thank you, Ma, the coordinator, Ma. Thank you so much, Ma, Prof. Bukola Oyebanji. It's so inspiring and captivating. In fact, I believe that everyone has gained a lot of insight into today's discourse. Before I take the questions in the chat box, Ma, I also have some personal questions myself, and I would like to start with my questions, Ma. From your illustration, Ma, in the case study one you gave, I got that from this. I got something that there could be overdosing in the use of these herbs, because some of the things we have, just of recent, I was with some people, and from what I got to know then from them was that in the use of herbs, you can't go wrong. You can't use, whatever the quantity you apply, give to the animal, it cannot be overdosing. But from your case study, I want you to buttress that point. So it doesn't mean that we can overdose the animals, no matter the kind of herbs we apply, or is it that the overdosing is only applicable to some kind of herbs? There are some herbs that we can use that no matter the quantity, you are good to go.
Well, as a pharmacologist, we have a saying that the difference between drug and herb, difference between drug and poison is the dose. If you drink too much water, there is something called water toxicity. You can overdose on water. Meaning that if you can overdose on water, you can overdose on herbs. And there was a time, that was quite a while, one of my students, she was working. And what we were using, we wanted to determine the LD50. By the time she gave this particular herb at a particular dose to animal, the following day we met all of them dead. And she rushed to my office. Ma, they are dead. I said yes. The most poisonous substance in the world today is from plants. So please, let me tell everybody, you can overdose on herbal drug. It's a fallacy that they are all safe. Safety of herbal drug differs with the different plant and dosage. And like I said, the difference between a drug and a poison is the dosage.
Thank you so much, ma. Thank you, ma, for the response. The other question again, ma, is this, that I got a clause here that when it comes to emergency, that the ethnoveterinary measure is not a good method when it gets to emergency. So is it that, and from your explanation so far, among some of the limitations you have mentioned, I also got the solutions to it. You prefer solutions today, but I think I didn't get that. What is the way out to this part? How do we ensure that we can also make use of the veterinary measures during the time of emergency as well? Because there was a time.
Okay,
I'm sorry, ma'am. I was with a farmer then, and all of a sudden the bird started falling and dropping dead. Then someone advised that he should get this tangiri and drop inside. It's just cut into that. It should slide into pieces and drop into their tank of water. And when they start consuming, it will it can alleviate the problem of the mortality. So does it mean that if she had done that, because the situation was it was emergency, does it mean that it may not work at that moment? So what is the way forward, ma'am?
Yes, because when you are using something crude, it takes time. And in emergency, what you don't have is time. And that's why for synthetic drugs, we have an IV, we have IM,
yes,
we have different routes. But for ethno drugs, for now, we are restricted to just 3. You said it yourself. It was dropped in the tank. Before it will be processed and it will be useful. You can't rely on that on emergency. There are some things that you just need to go straight and inject. But because of standardization and the level of crudeness, you cannot inject something that could straight into the vein. So that's what I'm saying, that researchers, we need to really come together, work. If we need to isolate, let's isolate some, but let it be something locally. We have isolated, we can get it used. But for now, with all those route of administration, emergency means no time. You know, sometimes you can give intracardiac, you can give intrathecal, we can't do that with herbal remedies for now. So, and that is where we really need to work more on.
So with time, we definitely get there. With time.
Yeah, if we do our research well, we standardize, then we can look for more routes of drug administration.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you very much. So I'll start taking the questions from the chat box now. A question from Azede Jalali. He said, Prof, is it right to say that further research is necessary and cooperation is as vital It's also important to ascertain the dosage, duration, and correlation with the age, breed, and species of animals. I don't know, did you get this statement,
Yes.
ma'am?
Those are all the things
Okay.
for every standard drug. Those are the things you find on there for synthetic drugs. So if we want to bring herbal remedy to her, we must be able to answer all those questions and put them as instructions.
Right, ma'am. The next customer is from Dr. Samuel Duro Sharon. He's asking, say, how often do we use divination and spiritual healing on animals in Nigeria?
Oh, well, I know that before now it is done because it is what you have that you will use. And at least I've seen some people, when they want to use their herbal remedy, they will tell you that there is something somebody called a weaje or something. I can't remember precisely, meaning that you must first use that thing before you now use the herbal remedy, so that it can work. So I believe some people do. And that's why I said we can separate both. And that is one of the reasons why people run away from when we say ethnoveterinary medicine or herbal. People, no. We have to separate the spiritual divination from strictly herbal remedies. So I believe some people do, but maybe we go deep into villages.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Another question is Victor, saying, wonderful presentation, ma'am. You mentioned earlier about the standardization and some other factors about how to use EVM. That's the ethnoveterinary medicine.
Mm-hmm.
How do we have a balanced approach that integrates the validated use?
Yes, researchers, because we normally call something folklore until you validate scientifically with scientific means. Anything you say your herbal remedy is doing is still at the folkloric part. And so that's why I said we need a lot of research. It goes beyond just taking 20 rats, giving them and say, it has worked. No. After you have used the rat, we need to start using with different species of animals so that we can get all those information. And then that is what is called validation. When you can validate, then it can become mainstream. But until validation is done scientifically, it is not mainstream.
Okay, all right, ma'am. Take him, ma'am. Then the second question from him is also asking, how does practitioners of EVM look into cultural sensitivity in its use?
Well, for cultural sensitivity, one of the things I will suggest, there are instances we go into villages, and when I talk villages, those are peri-urban. And we meet with people and we ask them, if you have this case, what do you do? We'll do a lot of survey. I think it is respect when you tell them what you, and of course, that is one of the things ethical approval is telling us now. Even when you are going to take survey, you must get ethical approval. And one of the things that you will be told is you must tell those people what you are going to use the knowledge you are gaining from them for. And that when you do your research, you go back and give them the results you have gotten. So let's assume I've gone to a village and I've asked them, what do you use for diarrhea? And they've told me. After doing the work, if that thing has actually worked, it's my responsibility to go back and tell them. It's just like you are taking samples from human beings. Now, if you take sample, you have to give them results. So that is the way to be sensitive. And then don't go with the mind of, I know it all. If they tell you this thing works for so, and in your laboratory, it's not working for what you have been told, you don't go out and be saying, everything is lie. There could be so many reasons why it's not working the way it has been said. So there must be respect and regard for culture. If you have gone into your lab and it's not working, the most is don't use it. And you just say you cannot validate it. But don't now start shouting and saying, those people, they don't know anything. And of course, respect people you are going into their areas to take sample, to do survey. You have to give them their own respect because nobody knows it all. And I said the society must encompass all of us. We have to come together to rub minds together. As a scientist, you are not going to teach them. You are going to discuss. You are going to share knowledge. You don't know it all. And so I think all of us as scientists and researchers, we must know this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Vivian Olefuro is commented, what an interesting presentation this is. I've been worked extensively with herbs on chickens as an animal scientist. There is a proof that they boost production characteristics. Reports do differ, though. Prof, is it right to say that further research is necessary and cooperation is vital? It is also important to ascertain the dosage, duration, and correlation. I think I've read this question earlier. I think another question is very interesting. Is there any pharmacopoeia for administration, direction, and dosage, withdrawal times, etc. for medicine prescribed in ethnoveterinary medicine?
Well, for now, that's all the things we are working on because we are trying to validate. And validation means you do everything pharmacokinetics, you do everything pharmacodynamics. So that's why I said we all need to come together, not just because it's low hanging. You have done your own. You have reached one level, you are living in, somebody who is doing something else. Let's come together and work on these things and answer all these questions in depth. When we answer all these questions in depth, we'll be able to prescribe it. And then it becomes mainstream. And then we don't rely on synthetic and imported drugs again.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Then the next question is, where is the connecting point between ethnoveterinary remedy and animal welfare?
Like I said, that's the third leg of welfare, health of the animal. And so ethnoveterinary medicine is about prevention and treating animals. You cannot say you have animal welfare in your heart when your animals are sick. So when we look at the 5 freedom from pain, from disease, that's the third leg of the freedom. And it's a whole lot. We have nutrition, we have housing, we have health, we have behavior, then we have freedom from fear. So ethnoveterinary medicine is coming in as the third leg of animal welfare. We want to give herbal remedies for prevention and treatment of disease.
Dr. Akitude said, well done, Prof. This is wonderful presentation. Then he asks, is there any laboratory in Nigeria that to validate or confirm active compound in the plant extract?
Oh, yes. People in chemistry, we have ethnochemistry. There are some people in chemistry in different universities that if you take your plant extract to them, you have to work together with them. Because what they normally do is bioactivity guided fractionation. And so when they are doing bioactivity guided fractionation, you have to work with somebody that is working with animals so that by the time they are fractionating, you'll be testing. Okay, it's still working, it's not working. And by the time you continue this, you'll be able to isolate that active principle. So there are some laboratories, at least I know some chemists that I've worked with in Nigeria. And of course, there is a limit because that time when I did my PhD, we used to have an NMR machine in OAU. And that's the only place that there is an NMR machine in West Africa. So when I did my work to characterizing and isolation to NMR, and I could not go ahead, I needed mass spectrum. I had to go to India to use their mass spec. But now I don't really need to go. If I walk till the stage of NMR, I can just send my sample to them and they get me my results. So there are chemists that you can work with.
Right, thank you, ma'am. Barnabas Babala said, beautiful one, ma'am. Priscilla Komalafe said, great presentation, ma'am. I'm happy you are concerned about not using animal for human purpose alone, but that animals should be cared for as a result of the interventions. Then another question here is, there is challenges of acceptability of herbal medicine even in humans. Do you think, Ma, that this remedy can be fully accepted in animals?
Well, I beg to disagree with that assertion. People are using herbal drugs. All these networking drugs that people are buying, they are all herbal. You know, all those years of Tianchi, Kedi, those are herbal drugs. And if you see how expensive they are, and if you see how people are buying them. So I don't, look, what I believe is, if you give people what works, and you can explain how it works, people are going to use it. And see, there is a lot going on now, not only in veterinary medicine, even in human medicine. Drugs are becoming ridiculously expensive, especially for people with chronic illnesses. A lot of people are finding it difficult to keep up with using their drug. If somebody will come tomorrow and say, okay, this drug can keep blood pressure down, you have standardized it, you have checked toxicity and all that, and it's working, I can assure you, people will beat down your doors to get that drug. And I'm sure even in animals, some people will ask you, organic, if it's because organic animal production is not yet so popular in Nigeria. In organic production, you cannot use synthetic drugs. You have to rely on medicinal plants. So I believe that if researchers, we can do our work well, standardize and mainstream it, people are going to get them.
Thank you, ma'am. Yunena said, great presentation, eye-opener. Ayola Oluyemi also said, thank you for your presentation, ma'am. Then someone commented that there is a saying, sorry, ma'am. Someone commented that, okay, still Yunena says, there is a saying, too much of anything can make you sick. I think it's just a comment. And someone is asking, how can we overcome regulatory hurdles to incorporate ethnoveterinary practices in animal health research?
Well, for now, if it is research, there is no hurdle. If you're in the university or anywhere, you can do your research. The only thing you just need to do is you get ethical clearance, because we don't want people using animals in a way that is not good. We are talking welfare. So when you get your clearance, you do your work. And when you do your work, and the first thing you have to do is IP, intellectual property, when the thing has worked. And please don't let's start looking at the bottleneck first. Let's first do this work and get to the level of registry. There is always a way. I believe that. So you can do your research. There is no problem. Immediately you get your ethical clearance. If you're in a university, you can get your ethical clearance. If you are not working in a university, you can go to the nearest university to you, submit your proposal, and it will be approved. And if there is any problem, they will tell you, make correction to the proposal, then you get your work done. And after getting your work done, follow due process. First thing first, immediately you know this thing works, you get the dosage, you have standardized. First go and register intellectual property. That does not have too much problem. And after registering your intellectual property, so that somebody else is not coming to steal it from you, then you can start the issue of regulatory activities. And those, I believe things are getting better and easier in Nigeria. But one thing you should know is, if you are trying to use anything as drug, the regulation must be very strict, because they must know that what you are giving out to animals or people will not do them harm. Because if you give something and it's causing harm, and the person sues you, they can sue the regulatory body as well. So that's why they are careful, not that they are so wicked and they don't want you to bring out those drugs.
Thank you, ma'am. Still the same participant asking, say, how can we know that the information provided in our research is reproducible? What can we do to ensure that we produce high quality research work on ethnoplants despite limited information available on ethnoplants and administration in animal care?
Well, that's where the issue of ethics. You see, I'm shouting ethics. You know, the Yoruba say that, probably because I just became the chairperson of ethics. This is where ethics comes in. There was recently, I was collaborating, a PhD student from somewhere else, we were collaborating together. Sincerely, we read how many papers for a particular methodology, not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5. We could not reproduce that result. At a time, I told the person, I said, okay, please, write these people, their email addresses are there. Maybe there is something they are not telling us. He wrote, some responded, some did not respond. That is not science. Science must be reproducible. And that is why when you are working with ethnoveterinary, when you are doing ethnoveterinary research, write everything down. You could see the list I generated on that question I gave. What's the DM, the dry matter? What time? What's the season? Look, you can even tell us, you must tell us the area, because somebody may be able to determine the type of soil. Just like I said, there are some onion that they will not make you weepy. It's because of the soil. If you plant your onion on a soil without sulfur, it will not sting your eyes. So make sure that you write every detail. Give serious attention to details. If you are boiling for 1 hour, I have read one methodology. The person said they boil for 1 hour. They did not put the temperature anyway. I boil for 1 hour with the same amount of water. Is a lie. The thing did not become concentrated. So please, let's give attention to details. Let us give every single detail of our work. And if they are saying we should get A and we are getting B, please don't change your results. Because sometimes we are humans. We already have it in our mind that we are getting these results. And by the time we finish, especially if it's a result that you want to use to get degree, you are spending money. I used to beg my students. I can appreciate it. Things are so expensive. How much is a bag of feed now for chicken? And now we are doing work on chicken. And we say we'll do 6 weeks. And after 6 weeks, we are not getting results. There is that temptation for you to change figures. Please don't do it. Leave it the way it is. What you have seen may be something new that we need to understand. So ethics become very important and very critical. And please, for supervisors, just don't leave your students and tell them, go and work, they will bring results. No, please don't let's do that. I know we are busy. We have so many things doing, but please, let's get involved. Let's get involved in the work of our students so that we can have research that is reproducible. We can have ethical research. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your time. Thank you so much for the knowledge. We are grateful. This will be the end of the questioning section. Over to you, ma'am, the coordinator.
Yeah. And thank you so much, Ma, for sharing your ideas and knowledge with us. I think this is actually an emerging area that we need to look into how to bring out the best from it. And yes, we can't actually look into animal welfare through one microscope. And we know that from different parts of the world, we all have the way we approach animal welfare. And if we have all these herbs and spices that can help us care for our animals, then I think it's high time we begin to develop them to suit our animals. And of course, this calls for this collaborative research work involving a whole lot of people, like you said, from the botanists, those in plant production and, toxicology and things like that for us to be able to ascertain the active ingredients, the dosage for different animal species and for different age groups and things like that. I think this is quite an interesting presentation. Thank you so much, Ma. So in the next 5 minutes, I'm going to open up the floor. If we have any participants who want to give any comment or further suggestion or contribution to this, we'll be happy to have you. I can see Professor Kolade. Kindly unmute, Prof. Yes, please go on, sir.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the lecture. And where I want to make a contribution is in the area of standardization of our ethnomedicine. And I believe to do that, we need to work on specific active ingredients in the herbal that we are taking. And if you want to standardize, it has to be at a comparable measure with what is acceptable in the international level. And I think what I'm trying to put up here is that, for instance, let's say the scenario of neem you gave, even though it did not mention specific treatment, let's say is to treat fever. And then we know that there are conventional drugs that can treat fever with specific active ingredients. So I believe where we need to standardize is, let us look for that same active ingredient in the neem for us to know that, okay, with these active ingredients, this can also work as this particular conventional drugs. When we begin to do that and document that, I believe we can handle the issue of standardization. That is where I've been directing some students that I've been opportune to supervise. For example, a student was working on malaria, and I said, you cannot just tell us you want to use a neem, you want to use awapa, you want to, all those ones are nothing. Why don't you take a chloroquine, amala, see the active ingredients in them since they are accepted, then analyze your awapa and let us see the active ingredients so that we can know that this is actually what is working here. But because you don't have standardization, that is why we have, as Madam pointed out, awogbaran. I hardly believe in that. But if we truly have standardization, we know the active ingredients in this, then our ethno-herbal medicine could take us to any level and compete favorably well with what is happening in the world. That's my contribution.
Well, Prof, as much as I'm a proponent for getting isolated compound, I will still want to be careful because these medicinal plants, they are used as templates for so many of the drugs. One of your students may eventually come across something that has never been in the market. Chloroquine, we know that there is a lot of resistance growing to it, and we are looking for new compounds. So instead of starting from known compound, can we start from the unknown? You know, when I did my PhD, I eventually isolated. But I think since that time, I'm not looking on isolation because I found, because, you know, when we isolate, you'll be doing bioactivity guided fractionation. I found more than 2 compounds, but the only thing I did was I picked the one with the highest activity. And that was the one I isolated and I characterized and I got the name. But, you know, in my heart, I was like, but all these other ones, like 10, that I was able to isolate, but I couldn't work further with because they didn't give me the best activity, so to speak. That they might have been having some synergistic effects with the one I said has the best effect. Their effect might have been something, you know, and I told myself, at PhD, I will come back and work on them. Of course, I couldn't work. I just left that work to end. So I think as far as we still want to isolate, maybe we should still look for novel compounds that are not yet in the market. Thank you, Prof.
I think Prof still wants to say something. Hello, sir.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. I got your idea, and I also believe that we can always get something new. But I believe that it's always good to start from the known and then build on it to reach the unknown. Because if you just come across something unknown, then it becomes more complex for you to defend. But if you build it from known, that it is on this ground, that this was added and it resulted in this, then I believe, like all the ones you said you also found, it should also still be linked to the known. And with that, we can establish many of those things we are discovering, and at the same time, we are throwing them away just because we don't know much about them. There is much about much of the thing we are discovering that we only need the known to be our foundation to really build on them. Thank you, Ma.
Thank you so much for that wonderful suggestion. But Prof, I also have, from her presentation, she talked about loss of knowledge, when due to the migration of the youths from the rural to the urban area. So this transmission of indigenous knowledge is being lost. So as an extensionist, Professor Okanlade, I think that is also a very good area for you to help us with, to help us see how we can, harness as much indigenous knowledge based on these plants and spices. And it will be of help to us. Thank you so much. We have 2 more hands up here. Dr. Ayola, kindly unmute. So the participants, if you're happy to turn on your videos, please feel free to do that. Dr. Ayola, kindly unmute. Yeah, please go on.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody.
You're welcome.
I want to appreciate Prof for her presentation. She has really delved into important matter here. And I want to contribute to what Prof was saying also about moving from known to unknown. For standardization, one needs to actually move from known to unknown, because these are the acceptable drugs. You have to use them as standard. Even if you are getting a novel compound, you have to use them as standard to prove your own activity. That is one. And another aspect I want to contribute to is that for this medicinal plants, there are techniques now that can be used to prove the compound, to look for the active compounds in these plants. And that's where I think collaboration should come in. There's something we are doing in my research lab now, that it is in silico analysis. You don't actually have to spend all your time profiling these plant materials in wet labs. You can use the preliminary study on using softwares to know the phytochemicals in this medicinal plants and to know the active compound that is actually working on the disease condition you are looking for. With that, you will save a lot of time and a lot of money during activity-guided isolation. With that, with these softwares and computer, you can actually know what to isolate without even using animal. Then from what you have gotten from the in silico analysis and molecular simulation, that is to mimic what will actually happen in the body, then you can now continue from there to in vivo experiments. So I think collaboration is the key here. You don't need to use all the time doing isolation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. Do you want to respond to that? So it's just a suggestion? Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. So we are interested in collaborating, and just like you said, you still have to go in vivo, no matter what you get in the lab. And I think that's because of pharmacokinetics. And what that means is what the body does to the plants you put in. You know, at a time, people were talking about using cell line. But the thing is, the way the body reacts, I can pick out liver, and I can say it's working on the liver. By the time I put the liver back into the biological system, it may be toxic to the kidney. So we'll be interested in collaborating, because that's part of reduction. And, you know, talking about standardization, I think we are mixing two things up. In the laboratory, we use the standard as a group to compare whatever we have. Yeah. But what I was talking about with Professor Okanlade is that he said the active ingredients in chloroquine, you look for it in neem. And I'm saying what is active in neem might be different from what is active in chloroquine. And that is how we get novel Of course, when you want to do any work, you need a standard, but that is not the standardization we're talking about. What we are talking about is getting the drug, having it the same every time you want to use it, and people knowing how to go about using it. So Dr. Ayola will be interested in collaborating with you so that we can work better. I've said it, we are starting an initiative, hopefully by middle of the year, so that we not only talk the talk, let's walk the walk. And I want to say thank you to Dr. Iyasere, sincerely. This AWGN is one thing that is actually helping and prompting me to go ahead with it. I've had the information and the idea for a long time. But I always be like, how do you bring people together? But sincerely, looking at her, she's mentoring me in this. And I believe that we'll be able to do it for ethnoveterinary medicine. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I hope we have more of this kind of presentations, even at international conferences. And I think it will also give us the opportunity for us to be able to meet, people where we can collaborate and maybe use their labs and also get funds and things like that. And thank you so much. There is one more hand up here. So Ismaila Emmanuel, please, I want you to be as brief as possible because of our time. Kindly unmute, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor and Dr. Iyasere. I think that one of the bottleneck we have in ethnoveterinary medicine is that we usually believe that one size fits all, and the treatments that we give to these animals are not well tailored to the particular class of infection, whether it is viral or bacteria or fungal and all that. And I had a similar experience about 3 months ago when I attended the training. And the instructor was teaching us how to use some local drugs to treat some infections like coccidiosis and all that. So one of the things I detected was that after getting the drugs that we paid for, I had a trip that cost me a week. And after getting back, I wanted to use the drugs on the animals, but I decided that the drugs that they gave to me has undergone fermentation. And I when I was looking at it, I saw that although some of them were also rancid, and I was like, I cannot administer these drugs to the animals. So at the point whereby they are telling us to introduce this drug to the animals, they are not telling us the shelf life of the drugs and the storage of the drug, because we know that when we're giving vaccines, we have a temperature for the drug that we're giving to them. Probably it should be cold. And when we're using all these medicines, veterinary medicines for humans, there are some that we for example, we are treating fever, we use them in hot conditions, we give them very hot to humans, and some might be very cold. So I think we should, when we're trying to prescribe these drugs for animals too, we should ensure that we give better knowledge on the storage means, because some drugs, we tell them that we have to use it for 2-3 days, but perhaps we'll not give proper measures on how to store the drugs and the temperature of usage for the animals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. So when we talk standardization, these are all the information that we have to put there. How do you store? How do you use? What time? Is it once a day? Is it twice a day? The mode of activity and all that. So those are the things that we are talking about that we have to work on.
I know everybody will agree with me that we had a fantastic talk today. So Professor Oyebanji, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
I wrote a lot of things down and I enjoyed your presentation. That was fantastic. I just want to know, we are used to all these drugs in sachets. Is there a way we can globalize the use of ethnoveterinary herbs in animal health?
Oh, yes. India is doing that. I bought some drug for reproductive for synchronization. I got it from animal care and they imported it in from India.
Oh, good.
I know that India, China, Japan, they are doing that. So there is nothing that stops us if we can do good science to put our own apps on international platforms.
Okay.
So that's lovely. Because I was just thinking, whenever you want to buy a drug, there's this shock that we have in Nigeria. We want it to be in sachets. We want it to be in form of in a standard way. If it is not properly packaged, people will condemn it, even if it is working. I think that's the problem we have with ethnoveterinary medicine. So over to you, Dr. Yasser.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I really appreciate your time, your contribution. It's amazing because this is an interesting topic. Thank you so much. So in the next 2 weeks, we'll be having a presentation on novel mini livestock, the welfare of insects farmed as food and feed. Yeah, we have contact with insects. For those from the Yoruba, we know this. I love this isusun, you know. I love it, really. So let's also have this discussion on insect welfare. So that will be coming up in the next 2 weeks. And that webinar presentation will be done by Dr. Megan Barrett from Indiana University, Indianapolis in the USA. Thank you so much. And with that, I say bye-bye for now.